The school beauty I had a secret crush on dropped out of school for a delinquent. However, after I became a well-known agent in the industry, I unexpectedly ran into her working as a server in a restaurant, carrying plates for others. She no longer remembered who I was, but I still wanted to give her a chance. So I asked her, "Willow, do you want to be an actress?" She left with me. I spent 3 years turning her from a plate-carrying waitress into the hottest top-tier star in the entertainment industry. What I never expected was that the thug who had abandoned her back then would come back looking for her again. Chapter 1. Willow never told me that Makoto had come to see her. I only found out because a media outlet I was familiar with had secretly filmed a video of Willow grocery shopping with a man. I'm on good terms with the owner of that outlet. The money I wire to his account every year as courtesy is enough to cover the annual revenue of a small to medium company with 100 employees. So he didn't make the video public. Following professional courtesy, he sold it as a favor and passed it to me. I opened the video. The paparazzi must have been staking them out for a long time, because Willow was fully disguised. Unless someone knew her extremely well, there was no way to recognize her. The man beside her, however, was dressed casually with no attempt at concealment. Even after all these years, even with the blurry quality of the footage, I recognized him the moment I saw him. Makoto, a high school classmate of mine and Willow's as well, her childhood sweetheart, the boy she had grown up with. Back in high school, Willow was the school's campus belle. Not only was she beautiful, her grades were excellent too. In every grade-wide exam, she never dropped out of the top 10. As for me, I held on to first place year after year. Makoto, on the other hand, was a notorious troublemaker. He was every teacher's headache, skipping classes, getting into fights, and constantly hanging around with shady people from outside the school. At that time, Willow was one of the teacher's most promising students. During the senior year sprint, everyone had high hopes for her, but that very year, she became completely blinded by love. To date Makoto, she frequently skipped classes with him. Her grades plummeted. Then, during a violent fight, her childhood sweetheart Makoto accidentally seriously injured someone, leaving the victim permanently disabled. The incident caused quite an uproar. Even the education authorities got involved. The victim came from a powerful family and refused to let it go. In the end, Makoto was expelled from school and saddled with an astronomical compensation debt. Willow barely hesitated. She chose to drop out for love and work to help him pay off the debt. Of course, Makoto didn't hesitate either. The very next day after his expulsion, he got himself a new girlfriend. The last time I saw Willow was at the bus station. Her figure, dragging a suitcase, was swallowed up by the crowd. She was strikingly beautiful, with outstanding looks, someone you could spot at a glance in a sea of people. I saw her scanning the crowd, as if waiting for someone she never saw. In the end, she smiled at herself in quiet self-mockery, turned around without looking back, and boarded the bus bound for City C. I hid among the crowd and silently saw her off. Though hid might not be the right word, Willow probably didn't even know who I was. I saw her again 7 years later. It was an ordinary celebration banquet. When she brought up a bottle of 1992 Lafite, I recognized her instantly and blurted out in shock, "Willow." She froze as well, then asked cautiously, "Do you know me, sir?" I smiled. Life had made her timid and reserved, but she was still stunningly beautiful. She was different from the rookie actresses under my management. Her beauty carried a restrained sense of story, willow brows and almond eyes that dazzled the moment she looked up. I didn't tell her we were high school classmates. Before leaving, I simply handed her my business card. She glanced at it. When she saw my name, there was no hint of surprise on her face. That was how I knew she had no memory of me at all. I didn't mind. I smiled at her sincerely and said, "Willow, you have great potential. Have you ever thought about entering the entertainment industry?" 3 days later, I received a call from Willow. She had excellent natural conditions. In this industry, a beautiful face alone can secure you a place, and with me pouring all my resources into promoting her, with timing, opportunity, and support all aligned, her rise was inevitable. Willow became my top artist. She was always cooperative, never caused trouble, and gave me no headaches, until today. When I received this video, I replayed the video on my phone once more and called Willow. No answer. After a moment of contemplation, I locked my phone, stood up, picked up the car keys from my desk, and walked out. Chapter 2. I stood at the door of Willow's apartment and rang the doorbell. No one came to open it for a long time. I waited another 5 minutes, raised my wrist to check the time, then reached out and began entering the passcode. Everything Willow has was arranged by me. Don't get the wrong idea. This apartment was one I introduced to her back when she earned her first real pot of gold. I just happened to be very familiar with the developer in this area and helped her save a lot of money. I'm not some sucker who buys cars and houses for women. That doesn't exist. I don't owe her anything. After all, I'm the one who changed her fate. If anyone should be grateful, it should be her. So back then, when she asked me what to set as the door password. I half smiled and joked. A password? Why not use my birthday? That way every time you enter it, you'll remember my birthday. Remember to be grateful to your benefactor, and make sure to send me a generous gift on time. She laughed out loud at the time, and that password has been used ever since. She never changed it. After I entered the code, the door opened with a soft beep. I stood at the entrance and knocked once more. I had given Willow more than enough time. I didn't know what might be inside the apartment, but no matter what it was, after this long, she should have cleaned things up. I walked in, and to my surprise, Willow wasn't there. Only a man stood in the middle of the living room. He was shirtless, wearing a pair of loose shorts, staring at me with a completely dumbfounded expression. It was Makoto. I paused at the entryway and asked him, "Where's Willow?" He hesitated, looked at me, cleared his throat, and asked, "Who are you?" I didn't answer. I opened the shoe cabinet but didn't see my slippers. I lifted my head and looked at Makoto, and sure enough, my slippers were on his feet. I still said nothing. I have a serious cleanliness obsession. Once someone else touches my personal belongings, I don't want them anymore. I showed no emotion toward Makoto. I smiled politely, courteously introduced myself, and said, "Hello, I'm Willow's manager, and her boyfriend. Could you tell me where Willow is?" Willow and I got together a year ago, between two consenting adults, coupled with the fact that I had always liked her. I never hid my feelings. Willow had actually sensed it for a long time, but neither of us had ever made it explicit. We ended up together because 2 years ago, when her career was just taking off, I went to negotiate a brand endorsement for her. I drank quite a lot during the business dinner, maintaining a calm smile and pleasant conversation the entire time. Only after the contract was signed and I saw the brand representatives off into their car did I start throwing up. When we got home, Willow chose to stay and take care of me. In my groggy haze, I heard her let out a soft sigh by my bedside. Her voice carried concern as she said, "George, you're really pushing yourself too hard." Willow has a cool personality, quiet, reserved, and sparing with words. That was the first time I'd ever heard such worry in her tone. I couldn't help but laugh. In the industry, I'm considered something of a legend. I started young as a talent assistant and worked my way up to become a top-tier manager. Though I'm young, I handle people and situations flawlessly and have never left anyone with anything to criticize. When she heard me laugh, she couldn't help laughing too. I rubbed my brow and joked, half real and half teasing, "If I don't push myself a little, how could I push you to the top?" She froze for a moment, then said softly, "George, I'm very lucky to have met you." That was the first time she ever thanked me. After that, neither of us needed to spell things out. Maybe the atmosphere was right. Anyway, that's how we ended up together. Willow and I are both adults. We have normal physical needs, and we spent every day together. There's a saying, when you're close enough, it's always easier to be the first to reach out. 7 years later, I finally plucked the moon I'd gazed at in my youth. But now, looking at Makoto, whose face had gone pale the instant I said those words, I found myself thinking absent-mindedly. The moon of my youth had her own moon as well, and I, this substitute, didn't know whether it was time to step aside. Chapter 3. When Willow came back, I was sitting leisurely on the sofa, smoking. Makoto stood awkwardly beside the sofa across from me. He didn't dare sit down, his face pale, head lowered, looking as if he'd already been lectured by me. Willow was carrying the things in her hands. When she saw me, she froze for a moment. Makoto, as if suddenly released from his restraints, immediately stepped forward with a face full of ingratiating smiles. Willow, she ignored him. Her attitude toward him was distinctly cold. She only asked me, "George, why are you here?" I glanced at her. Although she didn't acknowledge Makoto and only spoke to me, she was standing right next to him. I knew her too well to miss the signals hidden in her body language. Expressionless, I stubbed out my cigarette in the ashtray, took out my phone, and pulled up the video the media had sent me. Handing it to her, she took it, glanced at it once, and immediately explained, "This is a misunderstanding. He's my brother, Makoto." At her words, Makoto looked at her and subtly raised his eyebrows. I smiled and asked, "Your biological brother?" She paused, then explained, "No, he's the son of our neighbors from when I was little. We grew up together. I haven't seen him in years. Something happened at his home, so he came here looking for work." Makoto, on my way over, I had already had him thoroughly checked. After Willow left back then, he showed no remorse and continued hanging around with shady people day after day, drifting through life in a haze. Later, under the pressure of making a living, it wasn't that he hadn't tried to get back on track. He delivered food, carried bricks, even worked in factories, but no matter what job he took, he never lasted long. I knew that in Willow's first year after debut, Makoto had already contacted her. Back then, Willow dropped out of school for him, yet he felt no guilt whatsoever and got involved with someone else. Even when Willow was about to leave, he didn't say a single word to stop her. I don't know what state of mind Willow was in at the time, but she never replied to Makoto's messages. This time, he came looking for Willow because his father had fallen for a pyramid scheme, not only losing a huge sum himself, but also dragging relatives and friends down with him, leaving them completely ruined. After his father ran off, Makoto couldn't stay in his hometown anymore, so he decided to gamble everything and came straight to Willow. Now it seemed he had probably bet right. Willow hated his betrayal and cold-heartedness back then, but in the end, she still couldn't bring herself to completely cut ties with him. First love from one's youth is always special. It was that way for me, and it was the same for Willow. I nodded, didn't waste words, and asked her directly, "What are you planning to do? Let him live here?" Willow glanced at Makoto, frowned slightly, and seemed to be thinking. Her hesitation annoyed me. I stood up and made the decision for her, blunt and decisive. "I've already helped you intercept a potential PR crisis. He can't stay here. The risk is too high." Then I added, "I'll have my assistant help him rent a place and get him settled." After a brief pause, I looked her straight in the eyes and continued, "Willow, here's a piece of advice. Don't get involved in anything related to him anymore." I thought for a moment and went on. "I'm saying this not only from the standpoint of your manager, but also as your boyfriend." Only then did Makoto hesitate and speak up. He really was good at putting on an act. If I didn't know what kind of person he used to be, I might have actually believed he was honest. He smiled ingratiatingly and said, "Bro, you've misunderstood. There's nothing between me and Willow. When I came here, I hadn't showered for days and smelled awful, so I just used her place to take a shower. Besides, I ran out in a hurry and didn't bring anything with me, so I didn't have any clean clothes to change into." After speaking, he opened the bag of things Willow had just bought and showed it to me, looking as if he were explaining himself. "See, I just asked Willow to help me buy a few clothes. Once I change, I'll leave with you. Don't worry, I definitely won't cause trouble for you." After saying that, he picked up the clothes and, with practiced familiarity, headed straight toward Willow's bedroom, clearly going to change. I'd been rolling around in the entertainment industry for so many years, there was nothing I hadn't seen. This kind of low-level acting wasn't even worth responding to, so I simply stood there and waited for him to come out. Willow stood across from me and explained softly, "George, I didn't mean to hide it from you. I just felt it wasn't necessary. There's nothing between him and me. Don't overthink it." I turned my head to look at her. Even at this moment, I was still smiling. After spending so long in this industry, I'd already learned how to block out all my emotions. My smile was gentle, but my words were not. I said, "Willow, you could have sent him straight to a hotel, or simply transferred him some money. Instead, you let him come to your private residence, and even let him shower and change here. This is the first time, so I'll forgive you. I hope you'll be mindful of boundaries from now on." Willow was just about to speak when Makoto came out of the bedroom. He froze for a moment when he saw the tense standoff between us. Then I saw the corner of his lips lift slightly, almost unconsciously, but in the next instant, he reined in his expression, walked over with a servile smile, and said in a low, ingratiating voice, "I'm all set. Let's go." I turned to grab my car keys. When I reached the door, I seemed to remember something and turned back to Willow, saying, "Oh, right, I won't be coming here anymore. You know about my cleanliness obsession. Everything I left here, please just throw it away for me." Chapter 4. After dropping Makoto off at a hotel, I headed straight to Milan. Another artist under my management had a major runway show there, and I wouldn't feel at ease unless I was personally on site. By the time I finished everything in Milan and returned, a full week had passed. Willow came to the airport to pick me up. It wasn't until we were back in the country that I finally allowed myself to show signs of exhaustion. I rubbed my temples with my fingers. Willow glanced at me and asked, "Did everything go smoothly?" I laughed when I heard that and looked at her. "What, have I ever messed anything up?" She smiled gently and said, "That's true. There's nothing George can't handle." After a brief pause, she added in an offhand tone, "Oh, right. Last time you said you wouldn't be going back to that apartment anymore, so I moved to the place in Huampu district." I gave a low Her voice dropped, and she said apologetically, almost pitifully, "George, I'm sorry." I turned my head to glance at her and smiled. "It's fine. First offense, I'll forgive you. Next time, I won't be so easygoing." She smiled back at me, her eyes bright. "There won't be a next time. I'll cherish the opportunity you've given me." I didn't say anything. Willow and I are both smart people. I have an easygoing personality and don't forcibly interfere too much with the boundaries between my girlfriend and other men. As a pure egoist, I've always believed that excessive interference only increases my sunk costs. When it comes to relationships, rather than preventing potential damage, I prefer cutting losses in time, so there's no need to police someone's self-discipline. One reminder is enough, and I only ever give one. Since Willow's debut, there have actually been quite a few people secretly trying to pursue her. She handled them all well. Adult relationships mostly begin by chance and end over interest, so I've always gone with the flow. Later, Willow briefly reported to me about her entanglement with Makoto. I treated the matter as settled, until Willow and Makoto made it onto the trending searches. Around that time, I helped Willow take on a historical drama. After she joined the production crew, I got busy with other matters. But perhaps I had been pushing myself too hard. I suddenly fell ill. Type A influenza hit fast and hard. My head spun. My whole body felt heavy. Illness struck like a collapsing mountain. People from the company sent me home and forced me to rest. I really was exhausted. So I turned off my phone, drew the curtains, and slept in pitch darkness for an entire day. When I woke up, it was already past 8 in the evening. As I turned off airplane mode on my phone, something immediately felt wrong. There were countless missed calls. I opened my messages. The latest one was from the company's PR team. It read, "George, are you awake? Something's happened. Check the trending searches." I opened the web page. The top trending topic was marked with a glaring, eye-catching, breaking. It was Willow and Makoto. Chapter 5. Last time, the video of them grocery shopping together had been intercepted by me. But this time, the media outlet was clearly from the opposing camp. They didn't even bother negotiating. They went straight ahead and released it. The background was the film set where Willow was staying. Since it was a historical drama, the surroundings looked antique and classical. The video was a bit shaky, and the moment I opened it, my heart sank, because it was a clear, front-facing shot of Willow and Makoto. This time, there was no room to deny it. In the video, Willow's brows curved with a smile as she bounced along beside Makoto. Although there was no overly intimate behavior between them, it was obvious that Makoto kept paying attention to the road ahead of her. Then Willow accidentally twisted her ankle. Makoto squatted in front of her, bent down, and gently held her ankle. Even from such a distance, you could clearly see the tenderness and concern in his eyes. He said something to her, I couldn't hear what, and Willow nodded. Then he wrapped an arm around her waist and lifted her up. The video cut off abruptly there. After that, there were more candid photos of them having late-night snacks with the crew and other moments. In short, there were plenty of scenes showing interaction between the two of them. I felt my head start buzzing again, dizzy and heavy-headed, yet my thoughts were unusually clear. I called the PR team because I was sick. My voice was hoarse. I spoke concisely. Respond immediately. The photos and video are easy to handle. Say Makoto is a newly hired bodyguard or assistant, just doing his job. At the same time, hype up Willow's friendly interactions with other staff. Compile material from her past years working well with crew members. Edit it together and spread it widely through marketing accounts. Get the paid commenters in position as well. They moved quickly to execute. I put down my phone and saw plenty of probing messages from media outlets on WeChat. Frowning, I responded carefully and flawlessly. Without realizing it, 2 hours passed. PR crises are easy enough to deal with, as long as there are no photos of kissing or anything explicit. Everything black can be spun white. At the top of my pinned chats was Willow's conversation, messages from her, and missed calls from her as well. I didn't reply. I was thinking. My fingertip hovered over Willow's profile picture through the screen as I considered how my relationship with her should be handled. Just as I was thinking, a new call came in. It was from the property management of Willow's former residence. Willow didn't stay in City C very often, so I had always handled things like property management fees, utilities, and maintenance for her. The person on the other end was very polite and asked, "Mr. Wong, your car is parked in someone else's parking spot. Another owner has just returned. Would it be convenient for you to come move your car?" I froze for a moment, then it clicked. I replied, "Sorry about that. I'll come right away." Ever since Makoto came by that last time, I hadn't been back to Willow's apartment even once. I went to the residential complex and saw the car parked in someone else's space. It was Willow's car, but she hadn't driven it in a long time. I didn't have the key. Through the front windshield, I saw a pack of cigarettes sitting in the center console. Willow doesn't smoke, so whose it was obvious at a glance. She had let Makoto use the car. I laughed and said to the property staff beside me, "I don't want this car anymore. Call a tow truck and have it towed away." Then I went upstairs to the 32nd floor, a familiar yet unfamiliar door. I walked over and entered the passcode on the keypad. After 2 beeps, it displayed incorrect password. I paused, then entered 0712, Makoto's birthday. As for why I know his birthday, it's because back in high school, every year on July 12th, Willow would come to my family's shop to buy a cake for Makoto. When she carefully chose the cake, her eyes would light up. She looked genuinely cute. Back then, I stood behind the counter doing practice problems while watching her face, and couldn't help thinking to myself, Makoto, how does this guy have such ridiculous luck? Maybe it was those memories that planted some inexplicable obsession with Willow in me. So years later, when I saw her again for the first time, I still wanted to have her. But now, that obsession had reached the point where it should finally disappear. The lock beeped softly and opened. I pushed the door open. I didn't need to go in, just one glance from the entryway was enough. Willow had handed this place over to Makoto. Judging by the mess, he wasn't the tidy type. Traces of his daily life were everywhere. I looked around and saw Willow's clothes on the sofa, tangled together with Makoto's jacket. An intimate, domestic atmosphere. I'm a calm, detached person. I don't lose my temper easily. In my view, all problems can be solved, and if there's a solution, then useless emotions are unnecessary. But this really did disgust me. Emotions might be controllable, but I couldn't control my body's instinctive reaction. I felt like throwing up. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. After the nausea subsided, I expressionlessly closed the door. Then I booked a flight to the city where Willow was. Chapter 6. By the time I landed, it was already afternoon. Willow was still filming. The people on the crew all knew me well and greeted me politely. I smiled and nodded in return. Before long, the assistant director came over. We were old acquaintances. This industry runs on resources and connections. After some small talk, he probed cautiously. George, be honest with me, who's that guy who went trending with Willow? He's been hanging around the set every day lately. The vibe between the two of them doesn't look quite right to me. I smiled and brushed it off vaguely. He's just a personal assistant. The assistant director laughed along and said, yeah, that's what I figured. It's not that he looks shady exactly, he just doesn't seem very reliable. Still, I don't think Willow would have such poor taste. I smiled, and under his lead, went over to Willow's trailer. When I pulled open the door, I paused. An open bag of chips, half a bottle of juice, and Makoto's jacket draped over the back of a seat. I didn't get in. I walked around to the other side, where Willow's self-hired assistant was squatting on the ground playing a game with his head down. I patted his shoulder. Tony. He jerked his head up, startled when he saw me. He immediately turned off his phone screen, jumped to his feet, and called out, George. I smiled and said, go tell Willow to come find me after she wraps up. I have something to discuss with her. He nodded and ran off with his phone. Someone brought over a lounge chair. I really was a bit tired, so I lay down and rested for a while. Without realizing it, I fell asleep. When I woke up, Willow was sitting beside me. A blanket of hers was draped over my body. I frowned, brushed the blanket aside, then took an alcohol wipe from nearby and wiped my hands. The moment I moved, Willow turned toward me. She didn't say anything. Her gaze shifted from the blanket I'd tossed aside to the disinfectant wipe in my hand. She paused, and I saw her expression change slightly. I still didn't speak. Only after I finished wiping my hands slowly did I look at her. My gaze moved past her face toward the space behind her. Where's Makoto? I asked. She didn't explain. She didn't argue. She just said, George, I have no choice. The words were vague, but I understood them perfectly. She had no choice. Makoto was her first love, the one frozen in her memories of girlhood, the person she'd been willing to give up her future for back in high school. She couldn't let him go. She couldn't pretend she didn't care about him at all. TSK. Such devotion, truly touching. I smiled, emotionless, took out a contract, and handed it to Willow. She took it, glanced at it, and looked surprised. It was a labor contract. For Makoto, I said. The PR statement has already been released. Since we're claiming Makoto is your newly hired personal assistant, we can't let people find out he isn't. Have him come sign the contract. Coincidentally, you're short one anyway, and since you and Makoto are so familiar with each other, at least you know his background. The salary will be deducted from your account. Set the pay however you like. Willow froze. She clearly hadn't expected this attitude from me. Seeing her expression, I smiled again, polite, with just the right hint of humor, not overly distant. Why are you looking at me like that? I said. What did you think I came here for, to break up a couple, or to stake my claim? She frowned slightly, staring at me, trying to read my true emotions from my expression and tone. If my emotions were that easy to read, I wouldn't have survived in this industry. Besides, how big of a deal was it, really? So my woman was still entangled with her first love, carrying on an affair behind the scenes. Women are everywhere. Those who should be discarded, get discarded. Willow can still make money for me. Feelings can be thrown away, but her remaining value is still useful. No one fights against money, I said to her. Willow, we're a community of shared interests, two ants tied to the same rope. Helping you solve problems is helping myself. The reason I came in person to deliver this contract is simply to notify you of one thing. You know I have a very severe cleanliness obsession, right? Willow's face turned pale instantly. She understood. I had already thrown away everything in her apartment that Makoto had touched, let alone her. I threw those things away, naturally. Now I would throw her away as well. From now on, We would be nothing more than a straightforward working relationship between manager and artist. I would still help her handle these matters, purely out of professional ethics. And besides, a breakup should at least be said face to face. A rare look of confusion surfaced on her face. Over the years, she had grown used to relying on me. All she needed to do was act. I handled everything else for her. That wouldn't be the case anymore. For a brief moment, her expression went blank. Instinctively, she took a step toward me and reached out, an unconscious gesture of trying to hold me back. Her eyes reddened as she said, "George." Before I could move, an angry voice exploded from behind me. "George, what are you trying to do?" I couldn't help but laugh. Makoto rushed over, yanked Willow back, and shielded her behind him, his face filled with righteous fury. Interesting. Quite the idle drama. He craned his neck and pointed at my nose, shouting, "George, if you've got a problem, take it up with me. What kind of man bullies a woman?" I couldn't be bothered with him. I simply shifted my gaze from his face to Willow's and said calmly, "Have him sign the contract and mail it back to the company. I'll have Alexia coordinate the rest with you." I nodded politely to her, maintaining the last shred of decorum, and said, "I'll take my leave now." Chapter 7. I handed Willow's follow-up matters over to Alexia. She was someone I had personally trained from the ground up. Over the past year, I had rarely kept a close eye on artists myself. I had already shifted from management into capital. Aside from a few trusted confidants around me, not many people knew that I now held 35% of the talent agency's shares. In other words, aside from the big boss, I was essentially the second boss behind the scenes. As for me, I know how to pick things up, and I know how to put them down. When I said I was done with Willow, I was done. Mainly because I'm simply too busy. I have too many things going on. Emotions probably don't even account for 5% of my life. Her betrayal felt like nothing more than a mild cold to me. Sleep it off, and it's gone. After returning from Willow's film set, I went abroad to attend meetings with the boss and shareholders to present financial reports. The company's net profit was leagues ahead among domestic talent agencies. So after the meetings, everyone stayed overseas for a short vacation. All artist-related matters had already been fully handed off by me. From that meeting onward, I would be dealing purely with capital. During that time, I received messages from Willow. She had probably finished filming and returned home. What she sent me was a photo of her apartment, utterly wrecked. She asked, "George, was this done by someone you sent? So this is what people are really like after a breakup. You've really disappointed me." Indeed. I paid to renovate that apartment. I had someone smash the things that belonged to me. Any problem with that? If they want to live there, they can pay to renovate it themselves. But that had nothing to do with me anymore. I opened the photo of the ruins, glanced at it, snorted softly, and didn't reply. Later, she sent a few more messages, obviously just making conversation. Nothing that required a response. I ignored them all. By the time I leisurely returned to the country, another month had passed. I'm someone who keeps a very clear boundary between life and work. The day after landing, I convened all the managers for a meeting. We'd worked together for a long time, and everyone was familiar with my pace, so things went smoothly. But after the meeting ended, Alexia stayed seated, clearly hesitant, not moving. I raised an eyebrow at her in surprise. "Something wrong?" She hesitated before saying, "It's Willow." I closed the folder and adopted a listening posture. Alexia paused, then said, "George, over the past month I've had several run-ins with the media. You know Willow and that assistant of hers, right? Whether it's coincidence or deliberate, the media keeps managing to get candid shots of them. They're not crossing any explicit lines, but it's already beyond the boundary of normal friendship." Alexia had been calm at first, but as she continued, her tone grew more frustrated. She sighed. "Willow's status is what it is, so I can't be too harsh. But lately, her fan support groups have started getting restless. They've been coming to me asking what's going on. And you know Willow and Makoto are childhood sweethearts. The media might be suppressing it, but fans can dig things up themselves. For now, it's still under control." She looked miserable. "But George, if this drags on, it really won't stay buried. Something big will happen sooner or later." I looked out the window and said calmly, "Didn't we just sign a batch of newcomers? Tie them to Willow. Let her lead them. Get the newcomers pushed up as quickly as possible. Willow has sat in the top spot for too long. She's already forgotten how she climbed there in the first place." Willow's schedule became packed. The company had signed several new artists, and Willow was arranged to appear with them. She took them on variety shows and live streams. Naturally, when filming dramas, she also carried several of them along. The newcomers quickly gained some public recognition. Of course, in the process, I got cursed onto the trending searches by Willow's fans for sucking her dry. Looking at the topic's engagement numbers, I made a snap decision and had the paid commenters disguise themselves as newbies in the discussion, humbly promoting the newcomers. The next time I heard from Willow, she sent me a photo of herself hooked up to an 4 drip. No words, I didn't know whether she was trying to show weakness to get me to visit her, or protesting that the company had scheduled her too aggressively. I thought about it for a moment, then sent her a red packet to brush it off. Later, I saw a photo in my Moments feed. It was taken by someone from the company who had gone to visit Willow. The focal point of the photo was, of course, Willow. Everyone else was either standing or sitting on nearby chairs. Only Makoto was sitting beside her hospital bed, one arm draped openly over her shoulders, his behavior extremely intimate. I couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 8. Trouble breaking out was exactly what I expected. By the time it was reported up the chain to me, the situation was this: several major fan accounts had jointly demanded that the company fire Makoto. Every celebrity has core fans. Some of these major fan accounts are even run by the company itself. Beneath the core fans are casual fans. Sometimes, the mobilizing power of a single major fan account can rival that of the celebrity. Organizing support activities, controlling comment sections, boosting data, supporting endorsements, producing viral event photos. None of this happens without core fans rallying the casual fans into action. To put it plainly, on a very real level, fans usually have expectations of their idols, especially career-focused fans. They are extremely averse to their idol being in a relationship. For female celebrities in particular, many career fans demand a strong, independent female lead route and believe no man is worthy of their idol. So when a celebrity gets into a relationship, fans often feel betrayed after investing real money and effort. Generally speaking, with the right guidance of public opinion, it's still possible to turn a crisis into an opportunity. But this time, the fans simply could not tolerate Makoto. First, when fans were photographing Willow at events to produce promotional images, Makoto, whether intentionally or not, kept taking advantage of the situation. Sometimes he'd reach out to fix her hair. Other times he'd put an arm around her shoulders with overly intimate gestures. This time, the internal unrest among Willow's fans was triggered by a dispute between one major fan and Makoto. And Willow had spoken up for Makoto. I knew that major fan. She was one of Willow's earliest supporters. Back when Willow wasn't famous yet, she followed every event without fail, rain or shine, doing support work, waiting at airports, taking photos, and recommending Willow to everyone around her. She had originally been a fan of a top male idol from a boy group. While following him, she noticed Willow in the practice room, repeatedly rehearsing group choreography for the sake of a single shot. That was when she became a fan. The very first post on the account she created for Willow was a photo of Willow practicing dance when she was still completely unknown. Captioned, "The perseverance and effort in her carry a kind of upward life force, like a seed buried under concrete, struggling to split the darkness, take root, and sprout." And now, for the Makoto who had abandoned her back then, Willow chose to stand against her fans. As I read the report submitted by my subordinates, I felt disappointed in Willow. I called her in for a talk. She couldn't understand my decision at all. Frowning slightly, she said to me, "You were the one who told me to make Makoto my assistant, and now you're the one saying he should be fired." I replied patiently, "Willow, different situations call for different responses. I know you might think the fans are overstepping, interfering too much, but this is the livelihood you depend on. Have you forgotten that the people who lifted you to where you are today were your fans, not your childhood sweetheart?" Willow looked at me. I calmly met her gaze, letting her look as long as she wanted, until she suddenly laughed. To be honest, I had never seen Willow smile so mockingly before. She raised her head, looked at me, abruptly changed the subject, and asked, "George, is this because we broke up? Are you nitpicking me, targeting me?" I froze for a moment. She continued, "First you made me bring newcomers, then you made me rest and stopped me from taking on projects. Now you're targeting Makoto over something this small. George, are you using your position to get back at me?" I looked at her and leaned back against the desk. In that instant of sudden clarity, I finally understood why Willow had sent me that photo of herself being sick. She was testing my attitude. Newcomers at the company were starting to gain traction, and her recent schedule was filled with appearances meant to boost them. Perhaps that gave her a sense of crisis, so she couldn't help but test me. I looked at Willow, really looked at her, at this calculating, meticulous Willow, and suddenly, I realized I might never have truly known her. The years she struggled upward under my wing, even her relationship with me, might all have just been part of her performance. Perhaps, deep down, she felt she had been making compromises all along. So when Makoto appeared, she immediately picked up the moonlight of her girlhood. As I looked at Willow, I thought that my initial affection for her might have only come from the filter I'd placed over her in my youthful imagination. I laughed and said, "Willow, we're in a cooperative relationship. I'm only providing you with professional advice. Whether you take it or not is entirely up to you." She glanced at me, stood up, and walked out. She had had smooth sailing for too long, standing too high, blinded by a single leaf, to the point that she had forgotten who it was that had lifted her to where she stood now. Chapter 9. I called Alexia over. When she arrived, I was still thinking. She stood off to the side carefully. I tapped my fingertips against the desk. I always do that when I'm thinking. After about 5 minutes, I made my decision and asked her, "Didn't Stellar Media try to poach Willow before?" Alexia froze for a moment. She clearly hadn't expected me to bring this up. Hesitating, she said, "Give up on Willow now and make a profit off the breach of contract penalty." But her commercial value. I cut her off. With the way she's acting, she's bound to crash sooner or later. Her commercial value is given by her fans. If she doesn't even understand that, what kind of celebrity does she think she is? After a pause, I continued. Willow probably wanted to terminate her contract a long time ago. Otherwise, she wouldn't have confronted me head-on today. She likely thought she'd offended me and wanted to secure herself a way out. I smiled. But this works out nicely. We'll give her a little push. Let her bring up the termination herself, and squeeze the last bit of value out of her. Alexia had clearly been dissatisfied with Willow for a long time. Hearing this, she perked up immediately, agreed enthusiastically, and stood up with visible excitement. Just as she reached the glass door and was about to open it, she seemed to think of something and turned back to ask me, "George, do you still like Willow?" I froze for a moment. What a childish question. I laughed, met Alexia's gaze openly, and said with a smile, "Alexia, I'm a businessman." The filter she carried from my youth had long since shattered beyond repair. The reason I tolerated her was because businessmen value profit. Just like the first time she betrayed me, I had no real reaction, because she still had value. Before my interests were fully maximized, of course I would protect her, but now, I smiled to myself, if she showed no mercy, then she shouldn't blame me for being ruthless. The fuse that finally pushed Willow to propose contract termination was her birthday event. Fans who came to support her threw rotten eggs at Makoto. Makoto immediately tried to fight the fans on the spot. Willow was no better. She rushed over and slapped one of the fans across the face. All the fans present froze in shock. The birthday event ended early. Every fan left. Those remaining at the scene were all core fans. They had my contact information. I sued them and suppressed the incident, so not a single word leaked online. That night, however, every major fan who had attended Willow's birthday event collectively fell silent. The casual fans below had no idea what had happened, until Willow came to me to request contract termination. What surprised me was that she didn't plan to jump to Stellar Media. Instead, she wanted to set up her own studio. She looked genuinely distressed and said, "George, I can't keep wasting time here with you." I stared at her and smiled. Back then, she had said the luckiest thing in her life was meeting me. Those words still echoed in my ears, and now she used the word wasting. She seemed to have forgotten that if it weren't for me, she'd still be carrying plates in a restaurant. The rest was handled by legal. The breach of contract penalty was within my expectations. I had a clear grasp of how much she'd earned over the years. About 70% of her assets went into this. The remaining 30% was just enough for her to set up her own studio. She was willing to pay such a heavy price, probably because she believed money in the entertainment industry was simply too easy to make. She thought she'd rise again very quickly. I didn't bother to enlighten her. I just smiled and said, "I wish you great success and a brilliant future." Chapter 10. I didn't pay much attention to what happened afterward. I was busy. Willow wasn't important enough for me to keep an eye on. But even without paying attention, I still didn't miss her news. I think those few days were probably the peak of her traffic. After she terminated her contract and set up her own studio, the core fan accounts I had previously appeased collectively shut down their sites and unfollowed her. After all, she was someone they had once loved. When they closed their accounts, none of them spoke ill of her. They simply offered dignified blessings. Even my company posted a congratulatory message. The casual fans below were anxious and unsettled, but Willow clearly had a response prepared. New core fan accounts quickly emerged. The rhetoric was the same old thing, claiming that those departing core fans had been planted by me, that now Willow had terminated her contract with me. I was deliberately sabotaging her. She lost a portion of her fans, but it didn't completely destroy her foundation. What truly dealt her a devastating blow was the exposure of her relationship with Makoto. Without my protection, naturally no media outlet felt the need to give her face. She had always thought her smooth path was due to her own abilities. She never considered that she had been personally built by me from the ground up. I had more than 5,000 marketing accounts under my control. Each of them would push her videos at different times. You have to understand, people today have very little ability to judge the authenticity of news. The media says something, and people believe it. If my 5,000 accounts all say you're good, then you're good. And if one day I change my tune and say you're not, very few people will bother to dig up whether you were ever good in the past. There's no shortage of material. Black or white, it's all under the keyboards of marketing accounts. Of course, I didn't release any hit pieces. After all, she made me a lot of money. She was unkind, but I still had my sense of professional honor. In any case, It didn't even require me to step in. She managed to ruin her public favor all by herself. Dating, in itself, wasn't the problem. Fans actually have a certain level of tolerance. As long as Makoto's presence stayed low-key, fans could simply pretend she wasn't dating anyone. But I have no idea what kind of brain her publicity manager had. They actually started hyping up Willow and Makoto as a couple, packaging their so-called beautiful love story in every possible way. They claimed Makoto was a school bully who got expelled after offending powerful people while protecting her. Willow, loyal to her true feelings, gave up her future, dropped out of school, and worked to help him repay debts. Makoto, unwilling to drag Willow down, pretended to cheat on her to force her away. Years later, they met again. She was now a high and mighty star, yet her true heart still belonged to him. In the end, she forgave everything and reunited with Makoto, even at the cost of falling out with her former agency. Ah, what a touching love story. Unfortunately, the moment the press releases came out, it backfired. Someone commented, "What the hell is this? Is this some kind of dead-end logic? If she didn't give up her future, she couldn't help him. If he didn't want to drag her down, couldn't he have left before she dropped out? I really regret it. Why did I ever stand someone this stupid and love-brained?" Another wrote, "Willow Studio, come out and take a look yourselves. Is this supposed to be moving?" Someone else said, "I'm going to throw up. I worked so hard cheering for her and boosting her data. Turns out I was just one piece in your little game. Now I finally understand why so many people unfollowed her. I even cursed them back then. Damn it." There were also comments like, "George really is something else. Packaging Willow into what she used to be. His professional ability is honestly terrifying." And then there was this, "Fuck this, who? Makoto. This guy still has the nerve to show his face. His dad ran a pyramid scheme back then and left my parents completely ruined. And now he's driving luxury cars and living in villas." The next reply read, "What's the story behind what the commenter above said? I want to know more." Public opinion spiraled further and further out of control. As for how it ultimately ended, I didn't really care. It didn't take long before Willow became effectively non-existent in the entertainment industry. After all, at every major awards ceremony, I never once saw her name. The next time I heard news about her was because of a stage accident. During a commercial performance, someone in the audience, whose family had been ruined by Makoto's father's scam, managed to bring in a bottle of sulfuric acid. No one knows whether it was meant for Willow or for Makoto. Makoto pulled her over to block it. In the end, half a bottle of sulfuric acid was splashed onto her left face. She was disfigured. That was the last time she ever made the trending searches, only to be quickly buried beneath an avalanche of other news. She had no cards left to play. The last time I saw her was when I was staying at a hotel. One of the cleaning staff inside the room seemed strange, wearing a mask. She froze for a long moment when she saw me, then subtly turned her body sideways, revealing only half her face. I didn't recognize her. It wasn't until the manager beside her nudged her that she seemed to snap back to reality, hurriedly putting away her mop. As she turned around, I caught a glimpse of mottled, ruined skin beneath her mask. I paused. I didn't call her name. I showed no expression at all, only smiled politely and thanked her, the same way I would thank any perfectly ordinary cleaner. I didn't ask how things had ended between her and Makoto. In the end, it had nothing to do with me anymore. I turned around with a smile, without the slightest hesitation, and walked toward the main entrance of the lobby. The moon of my youth had long since set.